Hey guys, let's turn this stack of walnut into something beautiful. Stay tuned. All right, guys, we're going to jump right into the milling process. And today we're building a pill-shaped dining table. And a pill is just parallel on both edges, and then on the ends, it's rounded over like an oval. I'm going to kind of fast forward through this milling process. If you want an in-depth or thorough video on how I mill my lumber specifically, just let me know in the comments below and I will gladly put one together. But I'm getting all of this lumber jointed, square, planed down to the same thickness and ready for glue up. Once my lumber is all ready to go, I lay out my domino placement lines, and for this I had to be careful so that when I made that curved cut on the edge, I didn't expose a domino. I've done this in the past, and an exposed domino does not look good, especially with a contrasting color like walnut. So I have a spiral upcut bit over here, and I'm using my circle jig, but I decided to just use a screw to hold it in place. I've used this a lot, and it's getting to the point where the holes are a little bit sloppy and it moves around a little bit, so I think this screw will hold it a little bit more steady. And then, I don't know how well you can see, I'm just barely taking off a little bit off the end to keep as much length as I can. And then when I get over to the edge here, you'll see running right along the edge of the table. With the top cut out, it's time to jump over and start working on the legs. I put a 30-degree miter onto these legs, and this is kind of how they're going to be laid out on here. I'm going to use mortise and tenon joinery to join the actual legs to the base. Whoops. And the tenon is going to be completely exposed on the outside edge of all of the legs. I think it's just going to look really cool with an exposed tenon here. Although the mortise and tenon joinery makes everything look really awesome, it does require quite a bit of additional work when it comes to joining everything together. And most of that work, in my opinion, comes from just your layout lines, measuring everything, getting everything lined up and ready to go, and then making the actual cuts themselves doesn't take all that long. And then the second most labor-intensive part is cleaning everything up with the chisel. But I'm not complaining whatsoever. I actually really enjoy busting out the hand tools, and I just recently got a new sharpening system from Veritas, so all my chisels and planes are super sharp. I also like to use a marking knife like this one here to trace out all of my layout lines to give me a good reference to go off of. I start by drilling out a majority of the material with the Forstner bit, and then I finish everything up with a chisel. When you're using a chisel, it's recommended that you take small, light passes instead of trying to chop right to your line right away. This will make everything just work out a lot better. Just slowly creep up to that line and you'll get a better end result. After finishing up these mortises, I grab my hand plane and I smoothed out all these parts. It's so much easier to do this prior to the glue up. Speaking of glue ups, we're running right into this one, and I just did one leg on each side to start just because I had to add these clamping blocks at a matching 30-degree miter to get an even clamping pressure across the bottom. And I held those together with some Starbond CA glue, so those are on there pretty good, and this just allows you to get that clamp on there nice and straight and square to everything and pull everything tight. And here you can see that miter is nice and flat, and we got good squeeze out, so we got a nice tight joint. Also, before I add these legs onto the base, I went ahead and put in some threaded inserts. I do this on pretty much every project. You can add these padded leg levelers. I just picked these up from Home Depot, and it helps level everything out and make sure your table sits nice and flat, regardless if the floor it's sitting on is flat. I wanted to dress up the exposed tenons a little bit, so I added a slight chamfer with my hand plane. I do the corners first and then go across. That helps prevent blowout when using hand tools like this. And that slight chamfer actually helps when installing the leg system. It just makes it so that tenon inserts into the mortise a little bit easier. A couple taps with the mallet and I got this thing fully seated and ready for a clamp. And here you can kind of see what I was talking about. Pinches in between those two. have this nice and flush against this leg, and then resting on that exposed tenon, and then a quick check for square, and we are sitting nice and square here. I went ahead and threw another clamp on the bottom side as well to get a little more even clamping pressure here. And it's kind of dark in this corner, but we're sitting square from the ground up, which is super important. And we're also sitting square right here as well. And I like to use a damp rag to clean everything up right away, all that squeeze out, because standing in these tight corners is a real pain in the butt. Boy, things were going so good, and then I took a look at the tabletop after a couple days in the shop, and it started to develop a very slight twist in it, so I went back to my flattening jig to get this thing nice and flat, and then I cleaned up all of those router marks with the hand plane. In the end, I had a perfectly flat and beautiful tabletop. The last thing to do was to add these little mortises on the bottom of the table, and my leg system is going to sit and recess inside of these along with some threaded inserts to hold it to the base. All right, guys, we're getting down to the most fun part about woodworking, and that is putting on the finish. And for this table and base, I'm going to be using Rubio Monocoat as usual. And I'm going to mix a little bit of the walnut with the pure. Typically, I use pure on walnut, and adding the actual walnut color will just darken it slightly, so it won't be as amber. And I just got the base and the bottom done. I'm going to go set this base on some sawhorses somewhere to dry and cure. And then I'm going to carefully flip this top over and finish the top side of it. And we'll let that set up and cure. I'm loving how this is looking. Check it out. This is just the bottom. I can't wait to see what the top looks like. And here's that beautiful top. I just buffed off the Rubio on here. It's not fully cured yet, but man, did this table turn out way better than I had expected. I think this might be my best work to date. I brought this into the house for a few shots, and my wife said, I think we need to build the exact same thing for our home. And that says a lot because she didn't want to have a dining table in our home because we don't have a lot of space, but this table just looks way too good in our house to not have one. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody that's tuned in and watched this video and subscribed to my YouTube channel. It seriously means so much to me and my family. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next build.